Benjamin Castle are Americans. Watching the footy.
Liam Ryan saying, kick it my way, I want to jump over the pack, and here he comes! Ryan!
This is Buddy Franklin! This is the greatest showman!
Got the handball off to Myers. Myers looking for the lead of Stengel. Gee, they're good. Gee, they're sharp. Razzle dazzle Rioli.
Oh, who else? McDonald! Timber!
From inside the centre square. Boys kick the goal. Boys kick the goal. From inside the centre. Foul. I can't believe that.
This is Season 3, Episode 3 of Americans Watching the Footy, our 149th episode overall. Working on a Guard of Honor for our next one, another big milestone there. I am Benjamin Castle here alongside my brother Ethan for the third and final part of our team-by-team home and away preview. That's right. How does my voice sound? Can't sound much better than mine, or worse. Yeah, so I had a cold, was at the end stage, this is just a dry cough at this point. That's where I am with mine. And then I started sneezing again last night, so I don't know what the hell I'm doing at this point, but if I sound slightly different, that's why. And meanwhile, substitute teaching every day means that I'm constantly around sick kids, so who knows how many different strains have merged inside my immune system. So I think this is a pretty juicy final six that we've got. We've got 4 finalists, the team that finished 9th.
Oh no! Oh no!
And the power just went out. Hopefully it comes back on. My computer has trouble holding charges, so we'll see. Hopefully this comes back on a bit faster than what happened over at Blacktown during the Swans and Lions practice match. They had to delay the start of that by 30 minutes. So I also don't think we're going to have a snake on the field, which has happened at Blacktown twice in the past few months, because it happened in a Giants women's match as well. So I guess we're going to do this one in the dark and on whatever power we can muster here. Hopefully we can get this all done in one sitting. I think my computer definitely needs a new battery, so let's not waste time then. Let's spin the wheel and begin with something we don't have right now. That's really good timing. It's very good timing. It's funny. So it's been raining, but not at the moment. And when we had a nasty storm a few weeks ago, I was like, oh, the power's going to go out. I should have everything charged up. And then, well, it did for a few minutes at a time, 3 or 4 times. But with this one being drier, I wouldn't be shocked if this is longer lasting. So you're probably glad that you're going to be going out. Yeah. Seems like convenient timing on my part. So Port, we know all about the arc that their season took. Looked insecure in the beginning, from untenable to, a 13-game win streak, losing 4 in a row, rebounding, and getting ousted in straight sets. The problem for them all year was the health and stability of their back line, and they addressed that in the trade period, bringing in Asava Radagolea and Brandon Zerk-Thatcher, but those two aren't the answer. The answer would be, I guess, finding the right way for them to kind of tier their matchups and, most importantly, support Alira in the back. This was also a team that, a year after having terrible luck in close games, was great in close games. He had a pretty fun series of images and videos of Ken Hinckley losing his shit at final sirens. The Alir smother to prevent Ollie Florence after the siren goal at the SCG. It's not a smother. That's like a fingertip. He got to it. It didn't go through. Yeah, the after the siren win over Essendon, that was amazing. Dan Houston from 55 out in the rain. Was that one I slept through too? I think you did. I know I was out of town though. Yeah. So the last 2 Port games involving after the siren winners, I slept through. But I totally called that Swans one, if you remember. Yes, you did. I think it was the round preview right before, where you said,
you know what we're due for? Is someone missing a potential game-winning kick after the siren. Not just, got a bomb it from 60, but an actual reasonable set shot.
And it was that very round that it happened. Some psychic stuff there. The other thing I remember about that is Buddy Franklin just checking Miles Bergman out of the way.
Yeah, it was just kind of proof, like,
On the siren, you could do whatever the fuck you want.
yes, you can literally do anything.
So next time Geelong needs to kick a winner after the siren, what do they do? Do they just like instantly sign Taron Thomas and have him go out and just like crash into everybody?
Why would you need to sign somebody to do it? You can just do it with the guys you have.
Okay, then you get important guys suspended.
I mean, would you? Would they get suspended?
I feel like if it gets that egregious, they'd have to, but they won't call free. That's the point there. The other big thing about Port's list is the complete rehauling of their ruck department. We knew Scott Lysette would be on his way out.
I mean, he was hardly able to play the last couple years. Injuries got the best of him.
And so they brought in not one, but two backup rucks from other clubs.
Yes, Ivan Soldo as well as Jordan Sweet. And I mean, Asava Radagolea has some ruck abilities too, kind of.
Yeah, but you'd put Charlie Dixon or Jeremy Finlayson in there ahead of him.
Yeah, but you could throw Radagolea in on some of the ones like on the back end.
Maybe. Definitely Soldo's the more versatile of those two rucks, and I imagine he would get first choice. I mean, Richmond probably would like to still have Soldo at this point with Nankervis in a bit of doubt, even with what Sam Naismith has done for them in the preseason. Still weird to me that they pronounce it Naismith.
It's Naismith.
I wish.
I've been to his Hall of Fame. I can confirm this. You mentioned Brandon Zirk-Thatcher. I'm going to mention him as well. I've talked about him in relation to Essendon and how we talked about him always getting pushed around by bigger forwards when it wasn't so much his fault, it was him being miscast. When he's actually in a proper role, he's pretty decent, and this will allow him to actually do some of that because they have a Lear.
They have a Lear. They have Radagolea in there as well. Hopefully you see some better health out of Trent McKenzie and Tom Clurey maybe to help the cause. Still unsure of the structure, but it seems like just a club where Zirk-Thatcher would find a more natural list spot. And this club seemed to have had its problem solved pretty much everywhere else on the ground. The continuing maturity of now captain Connor Rosie and now vice captain Zach Butters, going along the halfback, the solid overall play of Miles, not Miller Bergman, and also he's not Jason Horne-Francis. Looks like Horne-Francis is being used pretty exclusively as a mid, probably allowing some more run into the forward 50 for Rosie and Butters each. And they'll need that strong on-ball role from Horne-Francis really to start the year as well, with Sam Powell-Pepper getting suspended 4 games in really a baseline case for the tribunal to start the year. The bump on Mark Keane in a showdown scrimmage. I just want consistency at this point out of the tribunal.
Yeah, my biggest thing is don't punish based off of how much the guy is hurt, punish based off of what the play was.
And it seems like that's the case here because it's not like, because Keane is in concussion protocol, but looks like he could be back for round 1. So hopefully this is more punishing the act.
That's how you change it. You got to stop the behavior.
So structure more solidified on the back end. We already know what they have in terms of midfield and forward. Career year from Willie Rioli as well, coming over from the Eagles and just looking quite secure. They've been missing a little bit of that smaller forward dynamic, especially with the other facets of Powell-Pepper's game. So Rioli was able to cover that. I just am skeptical about Port getting back, stay where they were with how crowded the top 4 is, and with, I wouldn't necessarily say a quiet off season, but no like one sure thing fix.
Well, maybe I'm biased because my off-season content that I was receiving was like nonstop Radagolea. So I don't think it was a quiet off-season at all.
Yeah, not quiet, but like nothing earth-shattering. They didn't mess with their top players because that wasn't broken.
Now, maybe Xavier Dersman becomes a top player over at Essendon, but I like what they did overall, adding depth. Now, I don't know if they necessarily made that add that's going to get him over the hump that's kind of been there for a while now, but these all seem like calculated moves, no pressing the panic button, just like, yeah, we're going to get better.
Well, they've backed in Ted Hinckley through the end of this season. Feels like every year they're just kind of putting off the inevitable, have yet to reach even a grand final under him. He's got that record well on the way now. Do you think it has to happen this year? Or do you think a finals win is enough to keep him around?
Great question. I I think it's always a context thing. Like, see how the schedule works, see who gets hurt. General baseline, I would say, yeah, you need to win. First off, I think after going straight sets last year, you need to win a final.
Yeah, it's not like you've already got a premiership to look back on in the recent past like Simon Goodwin does.
I think they have one of the toughest schedules of all.
And that's another thing that was kind of, that I was kind of putting into context there. Obviously, they got the double up against the Crows for Showdown. Who are their others again?
Carlton, Freo, Melbourne, Richmond, St. Kilda. I mean, who's, I guess, Freo?
Freo, and then...
But still, Freo away is kind of a bit.
Yeah.
Although it's less of a pain for them, it's still not an ideal trip. But yeah, pretty unforgiving schedule. The one advantage they have, of course, along with the Crows, is that they are hosting for the Gather Round, which I don't care if it's officially a neutral game. I count it as a home game. They have Essendon. Ooh, that'll be fun with the reserve race between the two.
Yeah, the Dersma return there. Crows have the D's, right. Ethan, who is your Port sleeper? You went with Frank Evans last year.
And I mean, he helped them.
He did. Good.
I don't think he did anything surprising. I'm between two guys here. I guess it would be hard to call Ollie Lord a sleeper, but with how old some of their forwards are and how unreliable health has been for Dixon and Georgiadis, I kind of want to go with him.
I feel like Lord has already established himself just with the time he had last year. I'm surprised we hadn't brought him up yet as part of why the forward structure seems more secure.
So because of that, I'm going to go with Jackson Mead. I think especially now with Dersma out of the picture, there's more opportunity there for him.
More opportunity on a wing and half forward spot. I would imagine that him and Jed McEntee could both benefit. McEntee, especially when it comes to half forward, was surprised that he didn't get selected as much last year. And of course, you'd expect them to pump more into their father's sons as well. Jackson being the son of Darren Mead, their inaugural AFL best and fairest. My sleeper is Jace Burgoyne, who largely has played as halfback with 13 games over 2 seasons. We were talking about some openings on the wing. That's where Jace Burgoyne has largely been during the summer, been training there probably about 80% of the time. I imagine he would still start the season in the SANFL, get more acclimated to playing the wing full time. But this is another father-son case and someone who I've already been keen on at a prior position. And he's now wearing his father Peter's number 7 as well. So that'll be cool to watch when he gets the opportunity at the top flight.
What was his number before? Was it 36?
That sounds right.
Well, they have a new guy wearing 36 now, so I'm going to... You know, though,
You can check tables.
Yeah, I just realized that. Let's see how good I am with this.
That sounds right to me.
Yep. 4-1 for me. All right.
Okay. 1 down, or 13 down, depending on how you think about it. 5 to go. And we got one of the clubs hosting, in fact, in the opening round, that being the runner-up Brisbane Lions.
Wait, do we need to have SpongeBob say opening round?
Opening round.
Nah, it doesn't have the same ring to it.
What if I could use a connection to get Tom Kenny to say it?
I would highly doubt it, but
I'm going to text send connection right now. So one of my friends works for Nickelodeon.
We mentioned his last episode when I used the SpongeBob cursing audio.
You're right. He said about that, by the way. It's him saying blow in a different context, but mashed up really well with the beat.
Ah, blow me!
And Derek would have that information. He might have asked Tom Kenny himself.
Well, just shot him a message.
Yeah. Well, the Lions were another club that largely plugged some holes in the offseason, nothing at the top of the list. Marcus Adams and Daniel Rich retired, both veterans in the back, but neither had any sort of spotlight on him in 2023. In fact,
well, Rich kind of did for taking himself out of the lineup at one point.
I guess, but in terms of on-field productivity, especially because why is it that when we're talking about the Lions, the power comes back on?
Power goes off, we talk about Port. We talk about Brisbane, power comes on.
Does not make sense.
Wait, no, we did it all wrong. When the power goes out, we're supposed to retell the story of Star Wars.
Ah, fuck. Okay, Americans watching the footy, Blues Harvest.
Ooh, that could be a good episode name at some point this year.
Yeah, but you were right, Ethan. Daniel Rich did get attention along with Jack Gunston for taking himself out of the lineup and going for what would have been the footy equivalent of an extended spring training.
You know what? Hey, let me check what time of year.
I think it was like May. Was it May or June? Seemed like it was like a little before the midpoint of the season.
So Alec Manoa was pulling a Daniel Rich, except Alec Manoa's was less voluntary, I think.
Yeah. And of course, Dunston is also out now because he's back at the Hawks.
The level of overlap between people who know who Alec Manoa is and people who know who Daniel Rich is has to be really small.
Well, it includes the producer for the Cespedes Family Barbecue guys, right?
Yeah, although I don't know if he's their producer anymore because they just moved from Fox and the Sirius XM network to Yahoo.
Well,
But that would be...
yeah, as a Blues fan.
There are probably some Australians who know who Alec Manoa is just through gambling stuff.
Or just genuine interest in baseball. Certainly exists there. But Rich is retired, Adams is retired, Dunston is back at Hawthorn, and they brought in Sticks in return, Brandon Ryan, who I imagine would start in the VFL, but when it comes to managing a tall or trying to get some extra ruck support in there, he would definitely be called upon.
Ooh, there's actually a departure that you forgot to mention. Noted Sandy Hook truther Reese Matheson.
I didn't think he was notable.
As a player.
The barometer. I'm trying to remember if he got any AFL time in 2023. I know that he's been playing in the Northern Territory. Yeah, Matheson didn't get any time in 2023. The biggest addition, though, even though he's not going to be ready for the first few rounds while still recovering from his torn ACL, is Tom Duday. Now with Marcus Adams gone and with some doubt in terms of some other tall defense, I imagine you would put Duday in over someone like Darcy Gardner, who played in the grand final, or even over my sleeper from last year, Ryan Lester, who is still really valued by the club, but is getting up there age-wise. I'd rather have him on a one-on-one target on the taller side, especially, than Brandon Starsfish trying to play above his height. Starsfish, by the way, went bald, and it looks really weird.
Ooh, yeah.
You just saw the picture day stuff?
The guy he's next to, Bruce, I'm not sure if it's Revel or Reville or what. Great flow.
I was going to say, makes up for Starcevich's lack thereof. And
Starcevich looks like he shaved his head for a fundraiser, which I know guys actually do.
Like the woke Ben Brown.
Yes.
I still imagine Lester or Gardner will get time early in the season, not just because of Duday's injury, but also maybe with some doubt lingering over Jack Payne's speed, even though he's been excellent one-on-one. His one-on-one play allowed Harris Andrews to really do as he wished, and I still believe that the Lions would have won the grand final had they played Payne instead of Gardner. Some extra responsibility on the halfback regs to start the season as well, with Connor McKenna having a hamstring issue. He's a test for the opening round.
I actually just discussed on the Hoops Crew post-game chat the other day, instead of the short-term, medium-term things we were talking about, in relation to Geelong injuries. And I've made this case on here before, but if you haven't heard before, I think that the AFL could actually do well adopting like an NFL-style injury report. Basically,
yes, we
in addition,
about this before.
Yeah, but my TLDR version, in addition to just saying how many weeks you expect someone to be out, like within training, if a guy's training and you're not sure if he's going to be playing in the game, you can put him as probable, questionable, doubtful. That's it.
Likely, probable, questionable, doubtful, out. It's simple. I mean, we get reports from, the press about like who's practicing and how much they're doing, but NFL teams provide a lot more information on that. And it would be nice for a bit more transparency there from the AFL. And that might also kind of be necessary if you're starting to look toward potential midseason trading windows in terms of really making players' availability more widely known. So just a couple things to throw out there. There was no need for the Lions to rock the boat in the offseason. They didn't. They patched things up that made sense. They brought in some extra tall depth. Nothing too crazy for a consistent top 4 team that is expected to be right back there again. And they've already got a nice young pipeline with, obviously, Will Ashcroft, who will be back in the midseason after his ACL tear. Jasper Fletcher, who played in the back part of the season and had some good moments before, I believe, ultimately being subbed out of the grand final. Will's brother, Levi Ashcroft, is going to be one of the big father-sons in this next draft class. And you've got guys as well like Devin Robertson, who bared his chest and then decided to re-sign with Brisbane instead of exploring a trade back home to the West. And then there's my sleeper pick, who you probably could have seen coming for a while.
It is amazing to me that Nick Dacos had his jumper ripped, and yes, I know it was preseason, but how does that not go like super viral? I mean,
Well,
it's Nick Dacos.
the difference is he didn't, throw it off and like tense afterwards.
And he didn't like run around with it for a while, but still.
No, he took it in stride, was very nonchalant about it. And also, it's Devin Robertson like went out of his way to make it a bigger deal. I think that's what it was there. But do you think you could have seen my sleeper pick coming for a while? It's a player that I've talked up a lot in the past, especially looking at his VFL performances and his pieces of AFL time.
Yeah, he was also one that I was considering picking. I mean, I don't think there are that many options here because it's a pretty well-established group.
Yeah, but a 16 disposal, 6 tackle showing from Kai Lohman in the practice match win out at Blacktown doesn't hurt my belief in him one bit. He made 6 appearances in 2023. He was the sub 3 times. He also briefly held the undefeated crown after Frank Evans lost his first game. Could improve in his goal accuracy, but did kick 31 in 15 VFL games last year. So as the Lions continue to manage players and as some of their older pieces start to show some more signs of wear and tear, somebody like maybe Lincoln McCarthy, who's already 30, I can see Lohman definitely getting more time and more recognition this year. McCarthy and Zorka are the two that I really think of there.
All right, I guess it's time to make my pick.
Yeah. While you're thinking about it, we forgot to mention Daniel Rich being out wasn't that big of an issue last year because of Kadeem Coleman, which we should mention again because Kadeem Coleman,
He was awesome.
probably their best player during finals and probably second best defensive player overall after Andrews. We had seen it coming from him.
Might have won the Norm Smith if they had won.
Might have. I think it either would have been him or Joe Danaher, because if it was anybody to kick the last goal, it would have been Danaher, and he'd kicked the one right before as well. It looked like they were targeting him on that last 52. Also, just realized Josh Dunkley shaved his head too.
I feel like you'd know if this was for a fundraiser.
Yeah, that looks even weirder.
Nah, Starcevich looked weirder just because his is an even closer shave.
I did not recognize Dunkley either during the practice match. Just realizing it now, just like, who's that number 5 guy with the beard and the shaved head? Wait, that's Dunkley? Probably the biggest trade acquisition last year.
Yeah, I'd say.
So who is your sleeper then, Ethan?
I was thinking about Blake Coleman.
Blake Coleman, Kadeem's younger brother?
Yeah, thought about it.
But I think he had been like maybe re-rookied or something like that, given less prominence in the VFL.
And yeah. So then I thought,
Really? Nobody's going to speak up. I'm the one who's going to have to say it. All right.
Shadow Brain!
Shadow Brain.
Yes, I know there's probably very little forward space. I am picking him just for his name. I guess, otherwise, if we're not just shit posting, maybe Kalen Lane, because maybe finally McInerney's not super durable for one. But yeah, I'm going Shadow Brain, and I don't think anyone can fault me.
I don't think that I can fault you either for that, because firstly, great name. Secondly, with some doubt in their long-term midfield and forward future, I can see guys like Brain getting more prevalent VFL time to really test them, and maybe he impresses from there. And again, in the ruck situation, I think Brandon Ryan would be the type of guy to step up if McInerney is less prominent, have him and Darcy Fort take on more ruck hitouts than putting Lane in right away.
There are plenty of logical reasons to pick Shadow Brain, and I don't need any of them. His name is Shadow Brain. That is literally the only reason you need to pick it. He can be the worst player on the planet. He can be like the love child of 2021 Lockie Henderson and 2022 Sean Higgins, and I would still pick him because his name is Shadow Brain.
Did 2023 Jake Kolajashny join in the conception?
No, but he's close. I don't know if a defender could ever be worse than 2021 Lockie Henderson, though.
Fair enough. So we've already talked about 2 teams that matched up in finals in a qualifying final there, 2 and 3 from last year. Speaking of finalists, here's another, because it's the Straight Sets D's, who have had probably the busiest start to 2024, the most newsworthy start to 2024 of any club.
Yeah, and I feel like as much has happened, there's still a lot more that's kind of like
unsaid as of now.
Yeah, they're still developing. So I think we're just getting started here. Benjamin, why don't you take us through what's happened aside from just bringing in a few players? Because I think from a roster change standpoint, it wasn't anything that outlandish.
Well, Jack Billings and pick 7 Caleb Windsor are having immediate impacts on the Wings.
Yeah, Jack Billings leaving the Saints is going to take a while to get used to. That's one, like, we talked about how weird Taylor Adams in red looks, but this is like an underrated weird one.
Well, considering he spent 10 years there after being picked 3rd overall, yeah, it's going to feel pretty weird. But Windsor has been one of the most praised draftees leading up to the season, and I can't see him being left out of the opening game, which is just 4.5 days away as we record this. Holy cow, I'm really excited about this. Watching Windsor going up on the Wings against maybe guys like Errol Golden for the Swans, that's getting me excited.
You're excited? Feel these nipples.
3 goals, I believe, against the Blues for Windsor. Was able to speed away from guys like Adam Saad, good at overlap situations, looked very in tune with things.
Oh, wait, sorry, I meant to say, woof.
Yeah, true. And in terms of the other trade acquisitions, Tom Fullerton and Shane McAdam won't be as prominent. Fullerton is ruck cover, also won't be healthy for the very start of the season. McAdam will get some half-forward time, needs to play bigger than he is in contests, though. Needs to get into more contests in the first place, and I hope he doesn't take away at all from a role that probably belongs to someone like Cade Chandler.
Chandler, all right. I know during the game against Carlton, it looked like he went down a little hard at one point. I think he was fine.
I think he's fine, yeah. He had a couple nice shots as well. In terms of outs, Brody Grundy was probably the biggest trade backfire of 2023.
I mean, did they give up a ton to get him?
No, but what it took away on the field, what it took away from Max Gawn, was pretty impactful. James's, Harms, and Jordan are out the door, but then it was after the trade period that things really started to happen. Clayton Oliver, you can just say his name and just release the hounds on everything he does. A lot of personal stuff. I think maybe there was something about, was there maybe seizures involved or something? And like sleeping troubles. We still don't have really concrete detail on it, but he was looking fine in the VFL Curtain Raiser this past weekend for being one of the most impactful players in the league. It's going to grab the headlines every time. Then how about Joel Smith?
Yeah, this is the one that I think there's still a lot more to come from.
A game day positive for cocaine, and then accused and not charged with trafficking, which probably means he provided for like another teammate or something rather than being involved with like some massive distribution ring. We have no timeline on that. Obviously, a whole bunch of legal hoops have to be jumped through first.
I just want to know, how did it affect his performance?
I mean, he did have some pretty long goals near the back of last year. Was it just that extra boost that he needed?
Because what I really want to know,
does cocaine make you a better footy player?
I just want to know the effects of various drugs on playing high-level sport.
The things that like aren't categorized as PEDs, like harder recreational stuff like this.
What is the effect of bath salt? What about licking toad?
Remember, licking doorknobs is illegal on other planets.
Oh no, licking toads to get high was a very old Family Guy thing.
I'm aware. Just remember about the doorknobs. Now they were already going to have to retool some of their back ranks with Michael Hibbard retiring, but with Smith having been a swingman and then staying back a bit more once Harrison Petty got time forward, and of course Petty's still doubtful for the first couple games with his toe injury, but Smith's legal troubles have accelerated that backline retooling. And there's a name that I'll mention later. It's not my sleeper. He was originally going to be, but there's somebody else I chose instead. And then you've got the surprise retirement of the offseason in Angus Brayshaw, which makes the halfback and wing situation definitely a lot more dire. It's not like Brayshaw, commanded one certain spot on the field. He was the perfect extra man wherever he was needed, particularly in the halfback and midfield. He made up for Oliver's absence by elevating his game at contests along with Jack Viney. He would be a really strong halfback mark. You really saw that in 2021. In his last 5 seasons, he never really had the spotlight, but he did pretty much everything right. And it's unfortunate that lingering concussion issues have prematurely ended his career.
I am not opening discourse again about the Brayton Maynard hit. You can get that anywhere else.
Regardless of your opinion on it, yes, it's unfortunate. It's sad that concussions rob somebody of the final years of their career, especially someone with a resume like Brayshaw's. And what this has all turned into between Smith and Brayshaw is that after there were so many doubts about forward structure going into 2024, there's just as much, if not more, about what their permanent solution is on the back end. You could argue that Stephen May and Jake Lever regressed a bit last year compared to 2022, definitely. And there are multiple spots to fill when, aside from Judd McVie, there was a shining youth prospect there.
So yeah, this would be the pick, most likely team to turn into an absolute shit show this year.
If so, do you think it cost Simon Goodwin his job?
No, because it's so much off-field stuff. Now, at the same time, this is a team that's been proven to have a pretty high floor and has regularly been a top 4 team. I mean, they've done it 3 years running. Just the last 2, they followed it up by not winning a final. What I think is fun about this is that there's a high level of variance finally. Because this is a team that for a couple of years has seemed like a pretty known quantity. And now it's like, we got a lot of possibilities for what can happen.
And it was the back 6 that was a big point of stability for them. Obviously, you have the midfield combination of Petrarca and Oliver and Viney in particular this past season. Viney really preventing Petrarca from winning the Brownlow and having as many 3-vote games as anyone. Looking at their preseason footage, their scratch match against Richmond, their community series outing against Carlton, it looks like they have figured out a lot of things regarding the approach into 50. That last kick had let them down so much in years past. They're relying on winning in packs a lot. The kicks seem more deliberate now.
They were relying on winning in packs without really like big bruisers crashing packs.
Yeah, like Ben Brown isn't what he used to be. Jacob Van Rooyen doesn't have the bulk to really do that. He's got, the upper body strength to win out in some packs in, double team situations. But it's never something that this list is going to be great at. So their kicking into 50 does look a lot more secure, harder, flatter, faster, stronger. And the conversion rate still is an issue. Some surprising inaccuracy from Bailey Fritsch in the preseason, but we'll see how much of that is shaking off rust when we get into the opening round against the Swans and round 1 against the Dogs. 3rd year in a row, they got the Dogs round 1. I think both of us have had somewhat of a soft spot for the D's as we've gotten to know the game.
It's funny because, from a football standpoint, they haven't been the most exciting, but they've had some enjoyable personalities, a couple of which are gone now, like Harms.
They have some big names around which you can gravitate. They use Your Grand Old Flag as the basis for their song, and Ethan would sing that song every morning in his 1st grade class.
It's also just a funny dynamic because, they're the oldest team and they've got this history and the association with the cricket club, and yet it's a pretty small fan base.
Smaller, upper class fan base, which kind of makes sense, honestly, if you're thinking about the MCC.
I find a lot about them funny. They might have...
I like what you said about having the greatest level of variance.
They have one of the toughest schedules this year. Yeah, I think we can agree the Lions have it
toughest, and the Pies and the D's are like that next tier.
Yeah, I mean, Frio's there. Oh, wait, never mind. Sorry, they double up against the Eagles. Forget that.
They do double up against the Eagles. They double up against both Western teams, which is strange. They've also got the Lions, Pies, Port, and Dogs. Cracks, Knuckles.
Yeah, I think the top of their double up is really hard, but there's a bit of a cushion at the bottom.
I mean, Western trips are never easy.
Yeah, and having both of them.
Yeah, that threw me off. But these Eagles, we've said this when we were talking about the Eagles, that's been like a surprisingly consistent double up as of late. And you can gripe about more of the AFL scheduling as a result.
All right, sleepers.
You want me to go with mine first? Or do you have one right off the bat?
I'm going with Taj Woden.
Oh, son of Brownlow medalist Shane. Did get some action near the end of last year. 2 goals in his 4 games and played against some quality opponents too. was part of the big comeback against the Lions. I think at 4-0, he has the undefeated crown right now.
There's definitely more room for midfielders to get in there than forwards, but I think he's a pretty safe bet, just considering the bloodline.
More room for midfielders than forwards, even with there being a pretty big drop-off there in terms of mid to talls after Van Rooyen?
Yeah, I think just unless someone gets hurt, which, I mean, that happens at some point, but...
I mean, I would say, you'd put him behind Shane McAdam at this point. But yeah, I do expect Wowoden to get some action. Not a huge volume of touches, but an effective disposer. Now, I had my eyes set on Tom Sparrow as a sleeper even before the preseason outings. He was actually my last pick in our fantasy draft, but I thought of him as an underrated part of their premiership team, and since then, he'd been a player who I'd followed closely. 23 years old and averaged career highs in most stats last year, 17 disposals, 4 tackles, 3 marks. He's been established for a while as a really physical, on-ball midfielder, but has never had a consistent spot in the best 18. I think he's going to find himself there in 2024 with some spots opening up as they reshuffle following the departures of Agus Brayshaw and the 2 Jameses in Harms and Jordan. And he looked very good at forward half stoppages and turnover punishing in a 3-goal performance against the Blues this past week.
I need to correct one thing you said. You said 2 Jameses. No, it's 2 James, because they're each one individual James.
Ah, yes, James Harms. Sorry, John Amos would even correct us on that. I wonder if John Amos has gotten his Bulldogs number 27 jumper yet.
I believe he has.
Good.
I know he's got Bulldogs merch. I know that much.
He's going to be so conflicted when the D's and Dogs play.
Oh, yeah.
The other guy that I was going to mention in terms of kind of fitting in there as part of the backline solution with Joel Smith and Michael Hibbert out of the picture is Marty Core, who they've brought back after a couple years away, was on the VFL Team of the Year each of the past 2 years and should slot in reasonably quickly into the back ranks. May not get there the first couple games, but he's bound to have time there. And maybe you can allow Judd McVie to play a little bit more of a halfback role, trying to limit a small forward from getting some better looks in pockets. But I'm just fascinated by the group of outside youngsters that the D's have between Windsor, Blake Howes, Kynan Brown. Windsor looks like a round 1 shoe-in, but Brown stood out to me, the son of Nathan Brown, who can't make a correct bet to save his life, even though he's paid by Sportsbet. Well, he's just doing a good job making money for him then. But
unless people realize what's up and just go against him.
Probably. Happy punting. But he was one of the standouts in the scratch match against Richmond, and Howes has gotten a reasonable amount of attention there. The inside group seems to be pretty established for the D's, and it's more outside where you can see the younger group stepping up.
You know, Benjamin, 78% of our listeners are between 18 and 35 years old, so they probably want to start a podcast like we did.
How did you know that number, Ethan?
Thanks to the analytics we have for Spotify for Podcasters.
Formerly known as Anchor, sorry Frio fans, Spotify for Podcasters has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast from your phone or your computer. No fancy software needed.
It's so easy you can edit it while drunk.
And Spotify for Podcasters doesn't just allow you to upload to Spotify, you can also distribute your podcast on platforms like Apple, Stitcher, and more, just like we do.
Best of all, it's completely free.
Not only is it free, you can even make money from listener support or ad revenue. Hint, hint.
Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to podcasters.spotify.com to get started today.
And we're back on Americans Watching the Footy. I'm Ethan Castle.
I'm Benjamin Castle. You can find me individually on relevant social media at BenjaminHK01.
You can find me at Castle Media.
You can find Ethan's son, Brian Harambe, at CatNamedGrind on Instagram.
Actually, just about to post a new photo of him.
Of course, because he fell down and showed his belly again.
No, that's not even why No, it was just a photo of him messing around along the stairs.
Oh, alongside the banister? I think he showed me that one. Collectively, we are on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, at Americans Footy. And some of you might be listening to our podcast via YouTube. If so, hi, we didn't forget about you.
And I'm on Cameo now. No, really.
How much is it?
$20. There's some Australian equivalent of Cameo,
which we also need to get on.
But basically, I thought, Someone out there will think it's funny and give it to their friends as a joke. Someone will pay me $20 to record a short message. It's a better use than giving some mukbang YouTuber $500. Or, well, I can't say it's a better use than giving World of T-shirts $35. I do like World of T-shirts a lot. Or you could just pay David Fletcher to stare at a camera and say, Jeff Mathis.
Hey, Ethan, get drunk.
I feel like Australians would love World of T-shirts.
He is the captain of New York.
Also, do Australians love Eric Andre? Because it looked like his Australian shows got great crowds.
I mean, they like kind of the surreal stuff. Auntie Donna's big there, obviously, Broden Kelly and the guys, so it would make sense. I'm still sad that we missed out on them at the Palace of Fine Arts. So 3 teams to go. We've already gotten 3 of the 4 remaining finalists in this episode. So where will the wheel fall here? Okay, we're going to that last finalist then. The previous team we discussed, Melbourne's opponent in the season opener, Sydney Swans, who had some notable injuries to veterans these past couple weeks. Luke Parker and Taylor Adams, both with multi-week injuries, potentially up to a month for both of them. Parker with a broken arm, Adams with an MCL strain because Taylor Adams, unfortunately, can't stay on the oval. That just means it's going to look even weirder when we finally see him in a game that counts in a Swans jumper.
Yeah, I've said that this is the weirdest one. I mean, Jack Billings is going to be strange, but Taylor Adams kind of takes cake.
Jack Ginnivan in a Hawthorne jumper will look weird, but at least he's on the young side. But it's somebody who's been as established as Adams is. And to go from, black and white to red and white. It's one thing if you went... And it's like mammoth clubs that always get the attention.
It's one thing, for James Harms to go from red and blue to red and blue.
But when it's someone who's been as well-regarded and long-tenured as Adams, plus the actual color change of the jumpers, and the number change to go along with it, too. I think he's got number 3 now. Yeah, that one's going to be weird. And yet, even with Parker and Adams out, the young group in the midfield makes me feel pretty secure about that part of the ground still holding up for the first month or so of the season. I know Errol Golden has got a lot of time on the outside, maybe exploring more options using him on the wing to start the season. But I feel like without Parker in particular, you're going to need him more in the guts. That's going to make more sense there and still have him being right off ball ups, either taking the run himself or feeding out to Chad Warner, Isaac Heaney, etc.
Can we talk about Callum Mills?
Roughest man Monday in AFL history, and yet he's now the sole captain, which the Swans haven't had in, going back even to their last premiership, they had co-captains.
I still think Collingwood's Mad Monday was worse just because they had so much room to do so much with it, and they took, just a really...
Just the safe route.
Really, unimaginative route. They could have done so many good costumes. Darcy Moore could have been Lucius Malfoy.
He did look pretty good as Legolas.
Mason Cox could have done what? I forget. There was something really good he could have done, and instead he just was a dinosaur.
Yeah. I know a lot of it what is Peaky Blinders and stuff. I think Pendlebury was involved with that.
There's so much that team in particular could have done.
But then there's the Swans Mad Monday where Mills tears his rotator cuff while wrestling with someone who I don't think has gotten an AFL game. I think it was Jacob Constanti, a recent first-round pick. I don't know how much we laugh about it and how much we're supposed to commiserate or what.
I'm just glad it didn't happen to my team.
And I guess okay with it being a team that you dislike?
Yeah, I don't have as much against them at the moment, but...
I mean, you had 2 teams who you were really against, it would be the Swans and Blues.
Yeah.
We can't be against Collingwood because of Mason.
I mean, I am, but not to that extent, because of Mason.
Yeah, I mean, once he's gone, then the hatred's truly on, right?
I guess.
A lot of these teams that, were finalists last year, the teams especially in this episode, had quieter off seasons on the player acquisition front. I would say, Swans, no splashes in the draft, but that was because they used up so much of their draft stock on Adams, Brody Grundy, also brought in James Jordan and Joel Hamling. The back line is definitely still a question mark for them. Last year, we tabbed Lewis Melkin as being the one to really solve those problems, but he had some longer-term hamstring issues that prevented him from having as much of an impact. And with Mills not being able to slide back, being out for the first part of the season, Paddy McCartan having retired, the responsibility will fall on Hamling as well as probably Melkin even more.
Yeah, maybe this is his breakout year. That's definitely possible.
Neither of us named him as a sleeper last year. I wonder if that means you're just going to take him now.
No, I'm not.
Probably seems tempting.
No, I've got my pick.
Good. Mine was one of the first that I had come up with. You want to give yours first?
Yep, IndyCar.
Thanks, Basil.
This is another one where you're doing it for the name.
Yep, the name and the memes.
Yeah,
I'm taking as many shitpost picks as possible.
I mean, has shown well from his time at the academy. I think he was a Category B elevation or a rookie draft pickup. Not someone who I would expect to get much time in his first year, maybe a little bit near the end. Maybe if they're trying to manage players going toward important games near the end or in the run-up to finals, because I would find it very hard to think that they'd be down in 8th again.
Considering the injury situation. But also they did have some pretty bad luck in close games last year. Some games where kicking accuracy really screwed them.
And certainly caught the injury bug near the first part of the season, which saw them in the bottom third, I think, for a little bit. We expected them to rebound. They did. They still have a stable structure. And, even without Buddy, they've got things for him going to Talls in terms of Logan McDonald and Joel Lombardi. Now, McDonald is one of the biggest targets thinking about the trade period this coming year. Frio especially think they're going to get him. So the Swans need to make the most out of this year, really establish McDonald as their top target and get him believing enough to sign on long term.
Now, looking at the Swans' injury situation and such, I'm going to give them a weird prediction or evaluation. I feel very good about them being somewhere between 5th and 8th. I don't think they quite crack the top 4, but I feel very good about them making finals.
Despite the injury situation coming into the season, I see them as winning at least one final.
I could also totally see this team winning flag.
I mean, did you bet on them to make it there last year, right?
Yeah, and I think this would be a very sensible year to get over the hump. If I had to pick a flag winner right now, it's
Sydney Derby Grand Final in Melbourne.
I think,
or are we going to get a Sydney prelim?
like logically, I would take the Lions, but it's hard to get to back-to-back grand finals. And I think the effect of losing one, I think it's even harder to get back into one immediately. So yeah,
Sydney Derby Grand Final.
No, I'm going to say Sydney over, I don't know, shit.
Collingwood.
Maybe. I could see that.
I want a Sydney Derby prelim so bad. This seems like the right time for it.
Will we break the trends of the Sydney Derby? Basically, either the Swans have to win a close game or the Giants have to win a blowout to break the trend.
And the venue does not matter. The Giants win close ones on the road. I mean, last year, road team won both last year.
Last year, the Swans won a close-ish one, but not quite like the one they lost.
Not nail-biting. My sleeper, I've been sold on this one for a while, Braden Campbell. He's listed as a mid, but he's dual-position defender and midfielder in fantasy. Could be a really good pickup there if you haven't done your drafts yet. He had some decent time as a halfback flank last year, and when he was further back like that, he showed just how accurate of a long kick he is. He was pick 5 in 2020, and it has just fallen under the radar in comparison to the other two, because when the other two are Logan McDonald and Errol Goulden, of course they're going to overshadow you. But he had career-high stats across the board this past year, and again, with Luke Parker out to start, the resulting midfield shuffle probably means he'll get some time on the wing early. So we had a 2023 finals matchup between our first two teams, a 2022 finals matchup between our second two, and also a 2022 finals matchup between our last two. Bulldogs and Frio are left. We could flip a coin, but I'm just going to spin this again.
We're also going to spin it one last time for the last team.
I'm not even sure if that works on here to just spin it with a full wheel, but we'll see. As we continue our jaunt down the ladder, the next stop is the Bulldogs, the penultimate stop here. Obviously, we've been critical of the Dogs' coaching and list management throughout our time podcasting thus far, but the club has backed in Luke Beveridge through 2025. They did reshape the coaching structure a bit after a review. Slight change in the leadership with Tom Liberatore getting a more prominent role as vice captain, but no real change in the chain of command at the top, which kind of reflects the Dogs' on-field dilemma as well. They've got things stable at the top of their list, especially this year. Really need to sell Tim English, though, on long-term commitment. He and Jamari Ugle-Hagan have yet to re-sign beyond this year. Aaron Naughton is the one that has.
English was the best ruckman in the entire sport last year. Also just a really good midfielder. You can kind of call him a unicorn.
Oh, he definitely is. And, knowing his background makes sense. Just had a huge growth spurt around, high school age here that transformed him from a midfielder into a ruck, but he kept the handball skills all along.
Only problem is, can he be out there for 23 games?
Can he be out there for a full season again? Yeah.
Look, he is at the most physically challenging position, but if you can keep him on the field, possibilities are pretty ridiculous. I do think, for all the criticizing I do of their lack of depth, that they've actually added depth lately.
Well, we already talked about James Harms, obviously, supplementing the wing there. And Nick Caulfield comes in probably into the best 22 in the back right away after a couple injury-maligned years to finish his time at the Saints.
Also, Lachlan Bramble.
Yeah, Lachlan Bramble, rookie pickup previously from Hawthorne.
Not a great player, but
depth. But, bottom of the list depth. Bottom of the AFL list, that is.
I just still think there's more they could have done to add some supplemental bits and pieces. But,
I mean, they didn't have that much they could give up in the draft because they had to preserve picks to get Jordan Croft, their father's son, at pick 15. Pick 6 already looks like a shoo-in for round 1, that being Lark medalist Riley Sanders, who might make people forget that Bailey Smith's not out there for this year, has slid into an outside mid role really well right away. A 30 disposal performance to turn even more heads in the community series against Hawthorne down in Tasmania at his home stadium. Grew up just around the corner from UTAS Stadium. As a Lark medalist, he already puts himself in the company of Christian Petrarca, Sam Walsh, Oscar Allen, Tom Hawkins. And the Dogs are trusting him with a lot of responsibility right away, and it looks to be paying off. They got maybe the best inside mid duo in their captain and vice captain, the Italian duo of Italian duos in sport.
Combine that with Sam Darcy, hopefully not having any more holes in his lung or other injuries, and you can see why there's reason to be optimistic about this team. That said, there's also reason to be pessimistic. And the biggest reason for that, to me, is Luke Beveridge doesn't make in-game adjustments and just regularly gets outcoached.
Hey, he made an adjustment in round 24. He put Rory Lobb up against Toby Conway instead of English.
When you can remember a coach's single adjustment a year later, that's not good.
I mean, it is the last game they played. Yeah, but the point is, it doesn't happen enough. And he's done weird things positionally. Billy Smith and Jack McRae had often miscast to the point that McRae is now given forward status in fantasy as well.
They had tried moving Josh Bruce to defender,
and then he tore his ACL. He retired.
But this is, I will say, compared to past years, when I look at this list, I like the depth on it more. I still don't love it, but I think there's room if a couple of the young guys take next steps. Buku Kamis, who another one that hasn't had a stable role. Arthur Jones, who we really liked and then kind of regressed as the year went on.
Well, Kamis has gotten a lot more time in defense over the summer, and teammates have given him rave reviews, so hopefully this is the time for the friend of the show to finally get some stability at the AFL level. Darcy's health would probably also make them miss Jordan Sweet a bit less and not really have any ruck worries in terms of kind of reserve options.
Other than that, the only other listed ruck is Lachlan Smith, who's 18 years old.
One of their pickups over the summer. The bigger question for me going into this year about the Dogs is defense. Liam Jones didn't have as strong of a 2023 as he did 2022, and he's 33. Ed Richards has been getting more time downfield in the preseason. We didn't have a whole lot of belief in the back ranks outside of that. And unfortunately, my sleeper, James O'Donnell, doesn't have a timeline confirmed for the return from his ankle injury. I am a strong believer in O'Donnell having a noteworthy 2024. He was a Category B signing back in April of 2023. He was pursuing cricket before doing the reverse of what his father Simon did and committing to football over cricket. He saw more of the ball in the air and on the ground in the final rounds, but with a full summer under his belt and with a spot opening up now that Josh Bruce is gone, I feel like once healthy, O'Donnell will state his case to be in the best 18. Definitely among like that first group the back is the worrisome spot. You know, there's still depth questions all over the list. Not as complete of a season out of someone who I think we tabbed as like a quasi-sleeper last year in Oscar Baker, quieter from Riley's of both Spellings and Weston Garcia. We're looking for more there. And maybe when healthy, those guys might be able to take another step, or maybe it's going to be some of the newer draftees that have to cover that. So who is your sleeper, Ethan?
I think it's hard to call him a sleeper even after how highly he was picked, but because he didn't really crack the AFL last year, we're going with Jed Busslinger.
Looking toward defense again.
Yeah.
Between O'Donnell and Busslinger, I feel like one of them's got to have a year that solidifies them in the top group for defense. And there aren't many other options for him. It's them or it's Buku, I could see, who was much more of a utility guy than either of those.
Yeah, so I'm going with the younger guy with the actual football background here.
Yeah, those two, or Buku or Sam Darcy, I guess. And with the ability for those last two to go between the 50s, I don't think you're going to steadily see either of them in the back. So we're looking for the next solid stay-at-home defender for the Dogs. And we picked two different candidates from their youngest ranks.
I do have an honorable mention, but I think he's probably a year away considering just how late he was drafted, and that's Aiden O'Driscoll,
Nathan's brother.
Yep. He's considered really fast.
Yeah, and has some of that same outside ability that his brother and his sister have. And it's funny that, you know, we're kind of closing our discussion of the Bulldogs with the sibling of people on Frio lists because Frio's our last one.
What a perfect transition.
Did you try to do that?
No, I saw the name O'Driscoll. I checked the bio.
I'm in. Yeah, I'm in on O'Driscoll as well. I'm in on all three of them between the two clubs. Now a big task for Frio. Yeah, let's put the wheel spinning thing in the background. Here's a big task for Frio.
Spin it.
Does it actually work? Hey, they updated it. You could actually do like a full circle. Hey! We weren't able to do that before on here. That's good. Well, Frio and the Dogs do double up again this year. So here's a task for you, Frio. Don't forget how to fucking play footy when Rory Lobb comes into town.
I mean, the second time they just got outplayed. The first time they played stupid. The second time they just got beat.
The Dogs double ups, by the way, other than Frio, Geelong, Giants, Melbourne, North, and Sydney. So aside from the Kangas, not much that's forgiving there. And it's not like North's going to be as far down as they were last year. Frio's double ups, other than the Dogs, obviously the Western Derby, Swans and Demons also, and then Port and Richmond. Not Andrew was kind of a bitch. Yeah, not forgiving at all for a team that slid down into the bottom third. And unfortunately, Frio's O'Driscoll, Nathan, has hopefully short-term knee inflammation. That's a quote, hopefully short-term, no timeline there, and a host of other injuries as well. Hamstring issues for Michael Frederick and the frequently hurt Heath Chapman. So he's probably just spending time recovering in the bathtub in Qatar. Not to mention no timeline on Brennan Cox either. And with the regression of Alex Pierce last year and just continued backline concerns the whole way through 2023, it's hard to have optimism about Frio, even with the scoring ability they have, even with Jai Amos now entering his second full season and already being their leading goal kicker.
It's so frustrating. 2022, I loved what Frio did, loved the direction they were heading in, and then they deliberately made themselves worse in the offseason and abandoned a lot of their strengths and their game plan, and I think it would be fair to say they were the biggest losers of this past offseason.
Yeah, it finally figured out, oh, Liam Henry belongs at halfback. He's reasonable there on the flank. Oh, he wants to go home? Okay. Saints, you can have him. Oh shit, Lockie Schultz wants to go home too. Oh shit.
I will say this. There are inherent challenges to being a Western team with players not wanting to be there and wanting to be home.
Having said
Also have the advantage, though, of players from the West that want to come back.
Luke Jackson, of course, being the prime one there. Having said that, the Eagles historically have done a much better job at keeping players who have come over from Eastern states, and you can probably put that hand in hand with some of their final success. But Frio had that patch there in the mid-2010s as well, and it didn't really slow down then.
So entering 2024, my question to Frio is, what's your identity?
Who are you?
Yeah, because I thought for a minute they were like, oh, this is going to be, like, flag mantle's going to be a thing. And now I've gone from thinking they're just a couple of years away and they've set their sights a little further down the road. I still think there are pieces there that can definitely get them there. Jai Amos is a great example. I'm still super high on O'Driscoll.
I am looking forward to hopefully a decade plus of Amos versus Allen in Western Derby goal kicking.
Caleb Sarong could be a Brownlow candidate.
Could be. Just label him as one. He inserted himself above Andrew Brayshaw in his past year. Probably the best clearance player in the league entering 2024.
You know what? Instead of picking Tuke Miller, I'm going to pick Caleb Sarong as my Brownlow for this year. I don't on the record.
All right, I picked Tuke Miller last year. And I want to believe in him this year as much as I want to believe in the Suns, but I'm going to trust my gut and go with Errol Golden. So you go Sarong, I go Golden for Brownlow picks. Lock it in.
Yeah, I would totally be in on Gold, but that's your thing, and I'm not going to try to steal your thing.
Now, like, what's my thing for Frio? I mean, my thing for Frio had been, for a while, give Bailey Banfield more time, but now there's somebody who I see as being above Banfield just in a couple games at the AFL level, that being my sleeper, Tom Emmett. I still think you haven't watched either of the games in which Emmett played at the end of last season either. You're still got to catch up.
I watched the first quarter of the Lions game before going to bed last night.
Wow, great progress.
So we get the others done in the next couple days, like actually before round one.
Round one?
Or before opening round.
There we go. So Tom Emmett, 22 years old, South Australian, who battled a world-first subtype of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma at age 17, then overcame a severe Achilles tendon injury before being selected in the 2022 draft. Scored 4 goals in his 2 games, was the pressure forward that they're really going to need now that Lachie Schultz is out. And with Josh Corbett being out for the full year with a severe hip injury, it means that Emmett's already further up the depth chart. I already believe in him more than I do in Bailey Banfield from just those couple games. Is that belief really built for long term? We'll have to see. But I was very right about Ethan Hughes last year for Frio, so I think I've got something here in terms of evaluating their talent. I want to see how much during the season I think, man, Frio could be using Joel Hamling right about now, because they didn't do much to help really any part of their list, including the back. I mean, Oscar McDonald signing on after a year out of the AFL, 86 games under his belt between the D's and Blues, had done well for Williamstown in 2023, but he alone certainly won't be a solution, especially if Cox and Pierce still have their troubles.
I've got a question. What happens to Will Brody? He was like this amazing breakout in 2022, and then last year ended up not getting much time. What do they do with him?
Your guess is as good as mine when it comes to Brody. 25 years old, 54 games across 7 years, only 5 last year after being one of their most prominent ball getters in 2022. I think outside of, the top of the midfield between Sarong, Brayshaw, and Fife, I think they've still got a lot of questions there. I don't see him as being cast in best 22s. I think it would be hard for him to overcome. Again, if Fife is back, obviously that solidifies everything there. Matty Johnson's a name that I'm really keen on in 2024. That's a type that I would expect you to pick up as a sleeper, Ethan. This the type as like a bigger midfield and half forward, getting toward like 6'4" or so, 18 games last year, starting with a Western Derby debut. And with an average of 14 touches at age 20, seemed to have slotted pretty seamlessly. Was a bit reckless, did get suspended last year, but those are growing pains.
I had a guy I really wanted to go with for my sleeper here, but it looks like injuries are going to make that not possible.
Are you talking about Seven Kuek, who's missing the season?
Yep, because this team has a real need at tall forward.
Well, aside from Amos, I mean, are they relying on the resurgence of Matt Taberner, which nobody should be relying on?
I mean, and Amos isn't even like height-wise way up there. He's more just strong.
Well, is he then? 196 centimeters, so what is that, like 6'6"?
Oh, I guess so. And then Kuek's just a little bigger, but I still think just frame and body type, I see Amos is more strong than like out-jumping people.
Fair enough, yeah.
Now that I've said that, he'll probably take like the best mark of the year.
I could see it. I mean, Josh Tracy surprised a lot of people at times last year. I know you had your frustrations with Geelong not being able to handle him.
Yeah, I think so. My pick I had mentioned Will Brody earlier, and I'm going to go with another former Sun in Jeremy Sharp.
Sharp is someone that Frio had talked up a lot going into last year. Was he a sleeper for us before? No, he wasn't. I think maybe Harry Sharp had been a Brisbane sleeper for us in the past. That might have been it. Comes back home having played for East Frio, and will definitely have opportunities there at halfback, and which would be regarded as in the 22 or just off. So he seems like a reasonable type to get some sub minutes there to try and reinforce the halfback and get some rebound late.
Is that it? I think we did all the previews.
I think that's all the teams.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing just how quickly this season has snuck up on us. Even with it starting a week earlier, this just feels like we almost weren't ready for it to start.
Yesterday was the first time I thought about Bunnings Warehouse in months.
Oh my gosh, yeah. One thing that you've probably noticed, Ethan, also is a slightly different look on Watch AFL.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, just more full screen.
Looks a little bit more official.
Looks more professional. It
looks less like an illegal streaming site.
Half the time on there, I was waiting for like a Chemist Warehouse pop-up or something. Soon enough, we'll go back to hating the McCain commercials and loving Garrett from NAB.
Which is is McCain? Which one is that?
Nothing special.
That's right. Okay, thank you.
Yes, and of course with NAB.
I think we are ready.
Well, you have had your eye on that high street space for a while.
When it comes to growing a business.
Want me to get moving?
It's funny how much Ethan and I, off mic, reference these commercials.
The fun is I don't know like American commercials because unless I'm watching something live, I'm just fast forwarding for a while.
Australian commercials are just innately more entertaining. There's a bit of a factor of the unknown there, but also they just get to the point more.
They're better.
They're so much better.
So I guess we'll catch you again for our opening round preview in a few days.
Yeah, that's gonna be next, and
that's a spicy meatball.
Yeah, and it's gonna be our 150th episode, so spicy indeed, and a bit celebratory because we celebrate footy being back.
And because 150 is a number to celebrate, apparently.
Every 50 is a milestone. I wish baseball teams treated every 50th game like a milestone. Baseball players are goofy enough that I could see some of them doing it.
I mean, I think they would probably just do the thing they do for, like, first career wins for pitchers. Push them around the locker room in a shopping cart while spraying them with beer, which I think is a great tradition.
That in itself already seems quite Australian. As a reminder, we are collectively at Americans Footy on relevant social media. I'm at BenjaminHK01.
I'm at Castle Media. And don't forget, give me a request on Cameo, which I guess the Australian equivalent, there's like Swish and Memo.
Get started on there too. Brian Harambe clearly wants out. He's staring at the door and he's already asked us once. He's on Instagram at cat named Brian. He's the most important individual follow. And yeah, catch you for the opening round preview.